My name is Fonda Marshall. I'm 29 years old, and on my wedding day, I found my dad standing in a hallway with no seat while 9 people from my husband's family sat at the table that was supposed to be his. Table 1. Front and center. That's where my parents belonged. Instead, someone moved them to table 14. The last table in the room, wedged between the kitchen door and a trash can. And when I asked my husband to be why, I heard him say something about my father that cracked open every lie I'd been telling myself for 2 years. I stood in that hallway in my wedding dress. 200 guests waiting on the other side of the wall. And I made a decision that I cannot take back and wouldn't if I could. What I did, what he said, and what happened to his family after. That's the story I'm about to tell you. Before I do, take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if this story earns it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I like knowing who's out there. Now, let me take you back to the morning of June 14th. The last morning I ever woke up as Garrett Whitfield's fiancé. Millfield, Ohio. Population 8,000. The kind of town where the pharmacist knows your blood type and the mail carrier remembers your dog's name. I grew up on Birch Lane in a 2-bedroom house my father bought the year I was born. He paid it off in 22 years. Wrote the last check on my 16th birthday. Then took us all to Dairy Queen to celebrate. My dad, Dave Marshall, fixed pipes for a living. 35 years with the same pair of steel-toed boots. Resold 4 times. His knees went bad around year 20. His back followed around year 30. But I never once saw him miss a day when I was in school. He'd come home at 6 o'clock. Scrub the grease off his hands with that orange soap that smelled like gasoline and citrus. And ask me what I learned that day. My mom, Linda, worked the cafeteria line at Millfield Elementary. She served lunch to 400 kids a day and knew every single one by name. She knew which ones were lactose intolerant, which ones had peanut allergies, and which ones came to school hungry because there wasn't food at home. Those kids always got extra helpings. Always. We weren't wealthy. I shared a bedroom wall with the water heater. My winter coat in 7th grade was my cousin's from 2 years before. But the door was always open. Dinner was always hot. And my parents never once made me feel like I was missing anything. I got through college on a scholarship and student loans. Became a nurse practitioner at the community clinic on Route 9. Paid off my debt by 28. I built that life with my own hands. But the foundation that was Dave and Linda Marshall. I thought a family like that was enough for anyone. I was wrong. I met Garrett Whitfield on a Tuesday in October. 2 years before the wedding. His father, Richard, came into the clinic for a routine physical. Garrett drove him. He was leaning against the reception counter when I walked through with a chart. Tall. Dark hair swept back. The kind of jaw that looks like it was designed in a boardroom. He smiled at me. And I'll be honest. I smiled back. We went to dinner that Friday. Then again the next week. Then every week after that. Garrett was charming in a way I wasn't used to. He opened doors. Pulled out chairs. Took me to a French restaurant in Columbus where the napkins were heavier than my winter coat. The Whitfields were a different world. Real estate developers. 3 generations deep. Their name was on a subdivision. A commercial plaza. And a bronze plaque at the country club where they'd been members for 25 years. 5-bedroom house on 2 acres. Richard ran the company. Garrett managed acquisitions. His mother Constance chaired the Hope Foundation's annual gala, and sat on 2 non-profit boards. The first time I met Constance. She wore cream silk and pearl earrings the size of dimes. She shook my hand. Looked me up and down. And said, "A community clinic? How interesting." Garrett used to date the Harrison girl. Dr. Harrison's daughter over at St. Luke's. She smiled when she said it. The kind of smile that isn't really a smile. I told myself that's just how people talk in those circles. Stiff. Performative. It didn't mean anything. Garrett squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "She'll warm up." She never did. But by then, I was already in love. And love has a way of making you explain away the things you should be running from. Garrett proposed 14 months later at the restaurant his family owned a stake in. A private room. Candles. A string quartet. And Constance sitting 3 tables away. Coincidence? Garrett called it. I said yes anyway. Because the ring on my finger wasn't from Constance. It was from the man who drove 40 minutes to bring me soup when I had the flu. Who texted me every morning. Who said my parents were good people and that he couldn't wait to call Dave Dad. Then the wedding planning started. And the version of Garrett I thought I knew started to blur. Constance chose the venue. The Whitfield Country Club. Not the little church on Maple Street where my parents were married. She chose the wedding planner. Her friend Diane. She chose the menu. And when my mom suggested adding her fried chicken as one of the appetizers, Constance tilted her head and said, "That's sweet, Linda. But this is a seated dinner. Not a potluck." My mother laughed it off. I saw the way her hands tightened in her lap. Every time I pushed back. Garrett had the same answer. "Let Mom have this one. Babe. After the wedding. It's just us. Our own house. Our own rules." I wasn't a pushover. I want to be clear about that. I made a calculated decision. Lose the small battles now. Win the war later. The venue didn't matter. The menu didn't matter. What mattered was the marriage. The 40 years after the party. That was my logic. And it made sense. Right up until I realized the small battles weren't small. They were rehearsals. Constance was testing how far she could push. And I kept giving ground. I didn't know it then. But the wedding day wasn't the war. It was the last rehearsal. June 14th. 6 a.m. I woke up in my old bedroom at my parents' house. Sunlight through the curtains my mom sewed when I was 12. The dress hung on the closet door. Ivory satin. Tea-length. Bought with my own savings. Constance had suggested a designer gown from a boutique in Columbus. I declined. This was the one thing I kept. By 10 o'clock, I was at the Whitfield Country Club. The place looked like a magazine spread. White peonies in crystal vases. Ivory linens. Gold-rimmed chargers at every seat. 300 candles. A 12-piece string ensemble warming up in the garden. $85. 000 worth of venue. Decor. And catering. Mostly covered by the Whitfields. Mostly. 200 guests were expected. Half from the Whitfield side. Business associates. Country club members. The mayor's wife. The Hendersons. The Porters. The other half were mine. My Aunt Grace from Akron. 3 nurses from the clinic. My college roommate. Old neighbors from Birch Lane. People who drove pickup trucks and wore department store dresses and didn't know what a charger plate was. I noticed the imbalance early. The Whitfield guests filled the front rows. The center tables. The spaces closest to the dance floor. My people were scattered toward the edges. Margot. My maid of honor. My best friend since freshman orientation. Leaned into me during the processional rehearsal and whispered, "Why are your aunt's people all the way in the back?" I waved it off. Probably just numbers. Their side has more guests. Margot raised an eyebrow but didn't push it. The ceremony went off at noon. I walked down the aisle. Garrett was waiting. He looked perfect. He always looked perfect. That was part of the problem. I was so busy admiring the frame. I forgot to check what was inside it. After the ceremony, while guests filtered into the cocktail hour on the terrace, I slipped into the reception hall to check the final setup. Call it habit. I'm a nurse. I verify everything twice. The room was gorgeous. 20 round tables draped in white. Gold place cards in tiny brass stands. Table 1. The head table, directly in front of the dance floor and the stage, was set for 10. That's where both sets of parents were supposed to sit, along with Garrett's grandmother and my Aunt Grace. I walked to table 1 and picked up the first place card. Gerald Whitfield, Constance's brother. I picked up the next one. Then the next. Lydia Whitfield, Thomas Whitfield, Mr. and Mrs. Porter, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, Patricia Whitfield Ross, Gerald Whitfield Jr., 9 Whitfields and their associates. No marshals. My chest tightened. I checking the other tables. Table 2. Whitfield cousins. Table 3. Country club members. I kept going. Table 10. Table 12. I found them at table 14. The last table. Tucked against the far wall next to the swinging kitchen door. I could hear pots clanging on the other side. The chairs weren't the polished mahogany that matched the rest of the room. They were padded folding chairs. The backup kind. A service cart with dirty glasses sat 2 feet away. The overhead light above the table was dimmer than the others because it was a utility fixture, not a chandelier. Dave Marshall. Linda Marshall. I stared at those 2 place cards. Gold ink on cream stock. Sitting on a table next to a trash can with a foot pedal. I found the wedding coordinator. Diane. Near the bar. Who changed the seating chart? She didn't blink. Mrs. Whitfield adjusted it this morning. She said the bride approved. I never approved anything. I stood in that reception hall alone and did something I trained myself to do in the ER. Triage. Table 14. Swinging kitchen door. Clanging pots. Folding chairs. A trash can with a foot pedal 2 feet from where my father would eat his daughter's wedding dinner. If I said nothing, here's what would happen. My parents would sit there. They wouldn't complain. My dad would straighten his tie. The one he bought in 2009. The only good one he owned. And he'd smile and say, "It's fine, sweetheart." My mom would fold her napkin in her lap and pretend she couldn't hear the dishwashers running 6 foot behind her head. And Constance would know. She'd know she could move Dave and Linda Marshall anywhere she wanted. The back of the room. The parking lot. Out of the frame entirely. And no one would say a word. Every Thanksgiving after this. Every Christmas. Every grandchild's birthday. Dave and Linda would always be table 14. The people who didn't quite fit. The ones you seat near the service entrance so the important guests don't have to look at them. I thought about my dad's hands. 35 years of copper pipe and joint compound. He could rebuild a bathroom in a day. He saved 6 months to buy that suit. I thought about my mom's dress. She'd sewn it herself. Altered an old one. Added lace at the sleeves. Replaced the zipper. I'd watched her work on it for 3 weekends. Hunched over the sewing machine in the spare room. Pins between her lips. Squinting at the bobbin. These people fed me. Raised me. Drove through snowstorms to get me to school. And someone decided they belonged next to a trash can. I went to find Garrett. I thought he'd fix it. I thought he'd be angry on my behalf. I was wrong for the second time that day. I know some of you watching right now are thinking about your own parents. Maybe yours were the ones who worked double shifts so you could have braces. Maybe they drove 3 hours to every school play. If you've ever had someone look at your family like they weren't enough, type "my family is enough" in the comments. Because what I'm about to tell you next is the reason I'll never let anyone put my parents at table 14 again. I found Garrett in the groomsmen's suite. He was standing in front of a full-length mirror adjusting his cufflinks. Silver. Monogrammed. A gift from Constance. Who moved my parents off the head table? He didn't look up from the mirror. Mom rearranged some things this morning. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. They don't have seats. Garrett. Table 14 has seats. Table 14 is next to the kitchen. Next to the trash. He sighed. The kind of sigh a person makes when they think you're being difficult. Fonda. We have 200 guests out there. Can we not do this right now? When then? After dinner? After they've already sat there for 3 hours? He turned from the mirror. His face was calm. Patient. The face of a man who'd practiced looking reasonable while saying unreasonable things. Mom has her reasons. The Hendersons and Porters are sitting at table 1. They're important. More important than my parents. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He stepped toward me. Put his hand on my arm. Gentle. Rehearsed. Baby. You're stressed. It's your wedding day. Let's get through dinner and I'll talk to Mom tomorrow. Tomorrow? That was always the answer. Tomorrow after the engagement party. Tomorrow after the shower. Tomorrow after the wedding. Tomorrow never came. I searched his face for something. Anger. Guilt. Surprise. Anything that would tell me he didn't know about this until right now. There was nothing. No surprise. No outrage. He'd known since morning. Maybe longer. He knew Constance moved my parents to the back of the room and he'd gotten dressed. Fixed his cufflinks. And checked his hair in the mirror. I walked out without another word. I still had one more door to open. On my way back through the corridor, I stopped at the welcome table near the entrance. A stack of printed programs. Ivory cardstock. Gold lettering. Sat in a neat row next to the guest book. I picked one up and opened it. Page 2. With love and gratitude to our families. Below that heading. A list. Richard and Constance Whitfield. Gerald and Lydia Whitfield. Thomas Whitfield. The Whitfield Family Foundation. 4 lines. All Whitfield. I flipped the card over. Checked the back. Checked inside the fold. Dave and Linda Marshall were nowhere. In the original version. The one I'd approved 3 weeks ago. My parents were listed first. With deepest love to Dave and Linda Marshall. Whose sacrifices made all of this possible. I'd written those words myself. Constance had seen the proof. She hadn't objected. She hadn't needed to. She just waited until the morning of the wedding and had Diane reprint them. My parents' names erased. Not just from the table. From the record. I found Margot near the bridesmaid's room. Touching up her lipstick. One look at my face and she set it down. What happened? I told her. The table. The program. Garrett's reaction. All of it. 30 seconds. No pauses. Margot didn't flinch. She didn't gasp or say, "Oh my God," or tell me to calm down. She just closed the lipstick cap. Put it in her clutch. And looked at me. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet." "Okay. What do you need from me?" "Stay close." "I'm here." "Dawn." "I'm right here." She didn't say, "I told you so." Margot had warned me about the Whitfields 6 months ago. Gently. Once. And then never again. She respected my choices. Even the ones she disagreed with. That's why I trusted her more than anyone in that building. I still didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew the next thing I needed to hear would decide everything. I walked back toward the groomsmen's suite. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was going to try one more time to stand in front of Garrett and say, "Fix this. Or I don't walk into that room." The door was cracked open. 3 in. Maybe 4. Enough to hear everything. Constance's voice first. Low. Controlled. The way she always sounded when she was most dangerous. "Garrett. Look at her father. That suit is from 2005. And her mother? My God. Did she sew that dress herself? They look poor. You cannot have them sitting at the front table. Our guests will think I know. Mom. The Hendersons are sitting right there. Jim Porter and his wife. These are the people who matter. Garrett. Not I'm sorry. But not a plumber and a lunch lady. You're right. The Marshalls are fine in the back. It's more appropriate. A pause. Then Constance. Quieter. You should have listened to me from the start. She doesn't belong here. She doesn't belong here. I pressed my hand against the wall. The hallway tilted. I heard my own pulse in my ears. Hard. Slow. Like a door being locked from the inside. My father. The man who spent 35 years on his knees under kitchen sinks. Who had 2 bad knees and 1 good suit. Who drove 4 hours round trip every weekend to visit me in college because he thought the dining hall food wasn't enough. A plumber and a lunch lady. That's what they called him. That's what they called her. And the man I was supposed to spend my life with said, "You're right. There are sentences you can unhear." This wasn't one of them. I stepped back from the door. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Something had gone very still inside me. Like the moment in the ER right before a code. When the noise stops and everything becomes clear. I pushed the door open. Constance turned first. Her face froze. Half a second. Maybe less. Then rearranged itself into that smile. The one that looked like hospitality. But felt like a locked gate. Fonda. Sweetheart. You look stunning. I heard everything. Garrett's jaw tightened. Heard what? We were just Dad looks poor. Mom sewed her dress. They don't belong at the front table. I held his gaze. What part did I misunderstand? Constance stepped forward. Hands clasped. The chairwoman posture. Fonda. This is just a seating arrangement. We're trying to make sure you called my father a plumber like it was an insult. You called my mother a lunch lady like she should be ashamed of it. I didn't mean and you. I looked at Garrett. Said they were fine in the back. That it was more appropriate. Garrett's voice dropped. Smooth. Calm. The voice he used in client meetings when a deal was going sideways. You're emotional right now. Fonda. It's your wedding day. Let's take a breath and I am breathing. Garrett. I've never been more clear. Constance glanced at her son. A quick, sharp look. The kind that said, handle this. Garrett tried again. Baby. Come on. Let's not ruin. I'm not ruining anything. You already did. I turned and walked out. The hallway was quiet. 60 feet of polished hardwood between me and the reception hall. Behind me. I heard Constance hiss something to Garrett. Too low to catch. His footsteps didn't follow. He didn't come after me. And that was the last answer I needed. I walked straight toward the reception hall. But I didn't go inside. Not yet. I went to find the only people in this building who had never, not once, made me feel like I wasn't enough. Margot was waiting exactly where I'd left her. Leaning against the wall outside the bridesmaid's room. Arms crossed. Watching the corridor like a sentry. Tell me, she said. I told her. Word for word. Constance's voice. Garrett's agreement. The plumber and the lunch lady. Margot was quiet for 5 seconds. Then what are you thinking? I'm thinking I can't sign my name to this. She nodded once. No drama. No gasping. Just the focused expression she wore in courtrooms. Okay. Then here's what you need to know. She lowered her voice. The ceremony is done. But the marriage license. You haven't signed it yet. Diane has it. The plan was to do the signing after dinner. Remember? At the sweetheart table during dessert. I remembered. Constance had insisted on making it a moment. The bride and groom signing in front of guests. Like a performance. So. Legally. You're not married. The ceremony was symbolic until that paper gets signed, witnessed, and filed with the county. No signature. No marriage. No annulment needed. No divorce. Nothing. I let that sink in. The officiant's words. The vows. The rings. None of it was binding yet. The only thing that mattered was a signature on a piece of paper sitting in Diane's leather folio. How long do I have? As long as you don't sign. But Fawn. Once you walk in there. Once the toasts start. Once Diane brings out that license. The pressure to sign in front of 200 people is going to be enormous. I know. So, whatever you're going to do, you need to decide before you sit down. She put her hand on my arm. Firm. Steady. I'm your lawyer and your best friend. In that order tonight. Whatever you choose. I'm standing next to you. I found my parents at table 14. Dad was sitting upright. Hands flat on his knees. The way he always sat when he was uncomfortable but too proud to show it. His suit jacket was buttoned. His tie was straight. He'd polished his shoes that morning. I could tell because they had that dull shine that came from drugstore polish in a kitchen rag. Mom sat beside him, smoothing a crease in her dress. She'd altered it herself. Taken in the waist. Added lace to the sleeves. Replaced the zipper. 3 weekends of work. I'd watched her hunch over the sewing machine in the spare room. Pins between her lips. Squinting at the bobbin. A server pushed through the kitchen door behind them. It swung open with a bang, letting out a blast of heat and the clatter of stacking plates. Mom flinched. Dad didn't move. Hey, sweetheart. Dad smiled when he saw me. You look beautiful. Dad, I'm so sorry about don't. He held up one hand. I can sit anywhere. Baby girl. This is your day. It's our family's day. He looked at me for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes. Not anger. Not sadness. But something quieter. Understanding. Maybe. Like he already knew what I hadn't said yet. I thought about the $12,000 sitting in the catering company's account. My parents had saved it over 15 years. A little each month from a plumber's pension and a cafeteria worker's paycheck. It covered the catering deposit. Every plate. Every glass of wine. Every dessert that 200 guests would eat tonight. Without that 12,000, there was no dinner. And Constance had put the people who paid for the food next to the place where the trash goes out. Stay here. I said, both of you. I'll be right back. Mom reached for my hand. Fonda. Don't make trouble on account of us. I'm not making trouble. Mom. I'm finishing it. The reception doors opened. 200 guests filed in, guided by the string ensemble playing Pachelbel's canon like it was a lullaby for rich people. I watched from the edge of the room as they found their seats. The Whitfield side settled into the front tables with the ease of people who always sat in front. The Millfield side shuffled toward the back. Checking place cards. Pulling out chairs that didn't quite match. The MC. Derek. Garrett's fraternity brother. Stepped up to the MIC. Ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome the families of our beautiful couple. He gestured to table 1. The Whitfield family. 9 people stood. Constance beamed. Richard gave a modest wave. Gerald and Lydia clinked glasses. Applause. Derek paused. Glanced at his card. Moved on. And now. Let's raise a glass to love. No mention of the marshals. Not a word. From across the room. I saw Nurse Patricia. My charge nurse. The woman who trained me in the ER. Walk toward table 14 with a plate of appetizers. She stopped. Looked at the folding chairs. Looked at the kitchen door. Looked at my father. She set the plate down and came straight to me. Fonda. Her voice was low, controlled. The same tone she used when a patient was coding. "Why are your parents sitting next to the service entrance?" "I'm handling it." "Pat. That man rebuilt the plumbing in my house for half price when my pipes burst in January. He wouldn't even take a tip." "I know. So, why is he sitting next to a trash can at his daughter's wedding?" "At table 1. Mr. Henderson. Jim Henderson, Richard's biggest development partner, leaned toward his wife and said something quiet. She looked over her shoulder at the back of the room, then back at him, frowning. People were noticing. The seams were starting to show. The first course was served. Butternut squash bisque in white porcelain bowls. My parents $12.000 plated and garnished with microgreens. Constance left table 1 and walked toward the bar, her friend Vivian at her side. Their path took them directly past table 14. I was standing near the dessert station, 20 feet away. Close enough to see. Close enough to hear. My mother was adjusting the lace on her left sleeve. The stitching had come loose. 3 in of thread hanging from the cuff. She was trying to tuck it under discreetly with the focus of someone who didn't want to be noticed. Constance stopped. Looked at Mom's sleeve. Then turned to Vivian. Bless her heart. Someone should have bought her a proper dress. She sipped her champagne. But I suppose you have to know your place. She said it the way she said everything. With a smile. At a volume that was technically private, but perfectly calculated to carry. My mother's hands went still. She stopped fiddling with the sleeve. Her eyes dropped to the table. Dad reached under the tablecloth and took her hand. He didn't say anything. He just held it. I have watched patients flatline. I have held a child while a doctor delivered a terminal diagnosis to her mother. I have seen things in the ER that would keep most people awake for weeks. But watching my father, Dave Marshall, the strongest man I have ever known, sit there and absorb that woman's contempt while holding my mother's hand under a folding table next to a trash can. That was the worst thing I have ever seen. Because for the first time in my life, I saw him ashamed. Not of himself. Of the situation. Of being put somewhere he didn't deserve to be and not being able to fix it. I was done. Completely and irreversibly done. I crossed the room. Grabbed Garrett's arm at the edge of the dance floor. Pulled him behind a column where the nearest table couldn't hear us. Your mother just humiliated mine in front of guests right now. What did she say? Know your place. Someone should have bought her a proper dress. Garrett ran his hand through his hair. Fonda. Mom says things she doesn't mean. She means every syllable and you know it. Can we please just get through dinner? Go over there. Tell your mother to apologize right now. He looked at me. Then he looked across the room at Constance laughing with Vivian at the bar. At table 1 where the Hendersons sat. At the string ensemble playing something soft and expensive. He looked at all of it. Then he looked back at me. I'm not making a scene. Fonda. 200 people are watching. Then whisper. I don't care how you do it. Just do it. He straightened his jacket. Took a breath. And said the thing that ended us. Your parents will be fine. They're tough. Let's just get through tonight. He turned around and walked back to table 1. Sat down in his gilded chair. Constance leaned over and patted his arm. He picked up his wine glass. I stood behind the column alone. The string quartet shifted into something by Vivaldi. Servers glided past with trays of seared salmon. My $12.000 salmon. 200 people laughed and clinked glasses in a room where my parents didn't have a seat worth sitting in. Garrett chose. He chose the table. He chose the room. He chose his mother. Now it was my turn. I went straight to table 14 and sat down. Not in the chair assigned to me at the sweetheart table. Not next to the groom. Between my parents. Mom looked at me confused. Honey. You should be up front. My family's here. So I'm here. Dad studied my face. He'd known me for 29 years. He could tell when I was about to do something. Fonder. His voice was quiet. Careful. Don't do anything on our account. I'm not doing this for you. Dad. I'm doing this for me. I looked across the room to the bridesmaids' table. Margot was already watching. I met her eyes and gave a single nod. She nodded back. Then she reached under the table, grabbed her clutch, and stood up. I took one breath. Then another. Then I pushed back my chair and stood. The walk from table 14 to the stage was maybe 60 feet. It took me about 30 seconds. My heels clicked on the polished hardwood. A sharp, steady rhythm. Like a metronome counting down. A few heads turned. Then more. The conversations didn't die all at once. They faded. Table by table. Like ripples moving backward. By the time I reached the stage, the room was almost silent. Derek, the MC, was mid-sentence into some anecdote about Garrett's college days. He saw me step up and faltered. "Oh, other bride." Everyone. Scattered applause. I took the microphone from his hand. He let go without resistance. His face caught somewhere between confusion and a grin. I looked out at the room. 200 faces. Crystal glasses. White linens. Gold place cards. Constance at table 1. Champagne in hand. Garrett beside her. Richard staring at his plate. My parents behind me. Table 14. The last table. From across the room. Constance leaned toward Garrett. I couldn't hear her. But I could read her lips. What is she doing? I adjusted the microphone. And I told them. Thank you all for being here today. My voice came through the speakers clear and level. No tremor. No tears. I'd spent 7 years in emergency rooms. I knew how to stay steady when everything was falling apart. I know you came to celebrate a wedding. And I owe you the truth about what's happening in this room. The last murmur died. 200 people went still. I could hear the ice settling in someone's glass at table 6. Most of you know me as Garrett's fiancé. But before I was that. And after tonight. I am Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. I pointed toward the back of the room. My parents are sitting at table 14. I'd like everyone to look at table 14 for a moment. Heads turned. All of them. 200 pairs of eyes swept to the back corner. Past the bar. Past the dessert station. Past the kitchen door. And found Dave and Linda Marshall sitting at a folding table between a service cart and a trash bin. I watched the reactions move through the room like weather. Confusion first. Then recognition. Then the slow tightening of faces as people understood what they were looking at. Jim Henderson put down his fork. His wife, Carol, pressed her hand to her mouth. Nurse Patricia, standing near the wall, closed her eyes and shook her head once. At table 1, Constance's smile hardened into something ceramic. Her hand gripped the stem of her champagne flute. Garrett sat beside her. Jaw locked. Eyes fixed on me 12 hours ago. I continued. My parents were seated at this table. Table 1. Right here in front. Where the families of the bride and groom are supposed to sit. That was the seating chart I approved. I let the sentence sit. This morning. That changed. This morning. Someone walked into this room and replaced every place card at the head table. My parents were removed and reassigned to the last seat in the house. Next to the kitchen. Next to the service entrance. Next to the trash. I paused. Let the room absorb it. That person was Constance Whitfield. Every head at table 1 turned toward her. Constance sat perfectly still. Her chin lifted. But the color had left her face. Her fingers on the champagne flute went white. Richard looked down at the tablecloth. He didn't move. When I confronted my fiancé, when I told him what his mother had done, he told me not to make a scene. I kept my voice even. Factual. Like reading a chart out loud during rounds. And when I heard him speak to his mother privately, he said, and these are his exact words, "The Marshalls are fine in the back. The Hendersons and Porters are more important." Jim Henderson pushed back from the table. Not dramatically. Just enough to create distance between himself and the Whitfields. His wife stared at Garrett with an expression I recognized from the ER. The look people get when they realize they've been standing next to something unsafe. Garrett stood up. "Fonda. That's not your twisting. Sit down." "Garrett." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You had your chance to stand up for my family. You chose not to." He stayed on his feet for 3 more seconds. Then Constance pulled his sleeve and he sank back into his chair. The room was so quiet. I could hear the kitchen door creak on its hinge. My Aunt Grace, sitting at table 11, put her hands flat on the table and whispered, "Tell them, baby. Let me tell you about the people who were moved to table 14. I turned slightly. Just enough to see my father in my peripheral vision. He was sitting upright. Hands on the table. Eyes fixed on me. My father. Dave Marshall. Fixed pipes for 35 years. He has 2 bad knees and 1 good suit. The one he's wearing right now. He saved 6 months for it." A woman at table 9 pressed a napkin to her eyes. "My mother. Linda Marshall. Serves lunch to 400 kids every school day at Millfield Elementary. She knows every child by name. She knows who's allergic to peanuts, who can't have dairy, and who comes to school hungry. Those kids always get extra." I turned back to face the front tables. "My parents put $12,000 toward this wedding. They saved it over 15 years. That money covered the catering deposit." I let the math settle over the room. People looked at their plates. Looked at their wine glasses. Looked at the seared salmon and the butternut bisque. "Every plate you're eating tonight. My parents paid for it." Then I looked directly at Constance. "And you put them next to the garbage." The room fractured. Gasps. A sharp intake of breath from table 3. Vivian, Constance's friend, set her glass down and put 6 inches between herself and the woman she'd been laughing with 20 minutes ago. From the back, a man I didn't recognize, someone from the Millfield side, stood up. Then Nurse Patricia. Then my Aunt Grace. They didn't say anything. They just stood. Like witnesses. Constance opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Garrett stared at his plate. Richard Whitfield still hadn't moved. "I came here today to start a marriage. A partnership. A life built on mutual respect." My voice didn't crack. I wouldn't let it. Not here. Not in front of her. But I cannot sign my name to a marriage where my family is treated as an embarrassment. I will not raise children who learn that love means hiding where you come from. I reached up and unpinned my veil. Folded it once. Twice. 3 times. Set it on the edge of the stage. Neatly. The way my mother taught me to fold things. With care. Even when you're letting go. To the guests from Millfield. Thank you for driving here. Thank you for celebrating with my family. We're going home. I looked at Constance one last time. To the Whitfields. I wish you well. Genuinely. But I deserve better than a man who sits in silence while his mother calls my father poor. And my parents deserve better than table 14. I set the microphone on the stand. Gently. No slam. No drop. Just placed it. The way you put down a tool when the job is finished. I stepped off the stage and walked to the back of the room. My heels on the hardwood again. That same steady rhythm. 60 feet. This time. Nobody talked over it. Dad stood when I reached him. Mom was crying. Quiet tears. The kind she always tried to hide. I hugged them both. Right there, between the folding chairs and the kitchen door, Margot appeared with my coat and bag. She'd already called a car. We walked out. The four of us. Past the dessert station. Past the string quartet, which had stopped playing. Past 200 silent faces. Behind us, I heard Constance's voice. Brittle and loud. She's lost her mind. And Garrett calling. Fonda. Fonda. Wait. I didn't wait. The door closed behind us. And the last sound I heard was my own breathing. If you're still here, you already know why I did it. But I want to hear from you. Has anyone ever told you your family wasn't good enough? That your parents didn't fit in? Type not table 14 if you know that feeling. And if this story hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Now, what happened after I walked out? That's where the real story begins. That night, I sat at the kitchen table in my parents' house. Same table I'd done homework on since 3rd grade. Formica top. Chrome legs. A chip in the corner from when I dropped a cast iron skillet in high school. Mom made coffee. Dad sat across from me and said nothing. Which was his way of saying everything. At 9:15. Margot called. The marriage license is still unsigned. I confirmed with Diane. She has the original document. It was never signed. Never witnessed. Never filed. So, legally, you were never married. Not for a single second. No annulment required. No divorce proceedings. Nothing. You walked away clean. I exhaled. One knot in my chest loosened. There's more. Margot said. Under Ohio law, since you cohabitated, he may try to claim some shared property. But your lease is in your name. And your bank accounts are separate. You're in a strong position. Okay. One more thing. He's been calling. 17 missed calls from Garrett. 3 from Constance. 1 from Richard. Block all 3. Already done. After Margot hung up, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. Dad had gone to bed. Mom was washing the coffee mugs. Even though the dishwasher was empty, she always washed things by hand when she was worried. My phone was silent now. No more calls. No more texts alternating between, "Baby, I'm sorry and you humiliated my family and you'll regret this." I didn't need his apology. I needed him to have stood up 6 hours ago and said, "That's my wife's family. Put them back where they belong." He didn't. And I couldn't undo what I'd heard. Mom dried the last mug, set it in the cabinet, and kissed the top of my head on her way to bed. "I'm proud of you," she said. "Your father is, too. He's just no good at saying it." 2 weeks later, I threw up in the bathroom at 7 o'clock in the morning, then again at noon, and again at 4 o'clock. I bought a test at the CVS on Route 9, the one where the pharmacist, Gail, had known me since I was 6. She looked at the box, looked at me, didn't say a word, just rang it up and handed me the bag. Positive. 2 pink lines. Sharp and unmistakable. On the bathroom floor of my parents' house. I sat on the tile and cried. Not the way I'd expected to cry if this ever happened. With joy or surprise. Or that breathless gratitude people describe in pregnancy announcement videos. I cried because my life had just become 10 times more complicated. And I was sitting on a floor that still had the same grout my dad installed in 1998. I was going to be a mother. And the father was a man I'd walked away from in front of 200 people. The question came fast. Tell Garrett. The answer came faster. Yes. This child had a right to know both parents. But telling him didn't mean going back. It didn't mean second-guessing. It didn't mean trading my dignity for a co-parenting arrangement wrapped in Whitfield money. Mom found me an hour later. She came in for towels, saw the test on the counter, and went very still. Then she sat on the floor beside me. Cold tile. Bad knees. She didn't ask questions. She just put her arm around me and held on. "You're not alone," she said. "You've never been alone." "I know. Mom. Your dad's going to lose his mind. In the good way." I almost laughed. Everything was harder now. But harder didn't mean wrong. And alone didn't mean defeated. Not when I had a mother who'd sit on a bathroom floor without being asked. I told Garrett by email. Margot reviewed every word before I sent it. 3 sentences. Professional. Final. I'm pregnant. I'm keeping the baby. If you want parental rights. All communication goes through legal counsel. His response came in waves. The first email. "Come home. Fonda. We'll raise this baby together. We can fix this." The second. 4 hours later. "My family will fight for custody. You have no idea what you're up against." The third. At midnight. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." 3 emails. 3 different men. Pleading. Threatening. Predicting ruin. All from the same person who couldn't stand up to his mother over a seating chart. Then Constance called. She'd gotten a new number. Mine was blocked. So she tried the house line. Dad answered. I was standing in the kitchen doorway. "Mr. Marshall," Constance said. Her voice perfectly measured. "I trust you understand that this child is a Whitfield. We have the best attorneys in the county." Dad looked at me. I nodded. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, "my daughter has a lawyer. Talk to her. Not to me." He hung up. Set the phone down gently. Went back to his coffee. That week, Margot connected me with her colleague, Hannah Wells, a custody attorney out of Columbus. Hannah was direct. "Ohio courts favor the primary caregiver. You have stable employment, family support, and no history of instability. His family's money is not a legal argument." I filed the paperwork. Everything through proper channels. No phone calls. No confrontations. No emotional negotiations. Just documents. Deadlines. And boundaries. Constance had said they had the best attorneys in the county. Maybe they did. But I had something she didn't anticipate. A woman who stopped being afraid of her on a Saturday in June. The fallout came quietly. No explosions. No headlines. Just the slow, steady erosion of everything the Whitfields had built their reputation on. Jim Henderson called Richard the following Monday. I didn't hear the conversation firsthand. I heard it later. Second hand. Through Margot. Who heard it from Hannah. Who heard it from a paralegal whose husband played golf with Henderson. Richard. I've been thinking about the development on Oak Ridge. I'm not comfortable moving forward. Jim. What does a wedding have to do with a business deal? If that's how your family treats the people closest to you, I need to think about how you'd treat a partner when things get difficult. Henderson pulled out of the Oak Ridge project. A mixed-use development worth, by local estimates, somewhere north of 300,000 in Henderson's share alone. Richard had to find a new investor. The project stalled 8 months. 3 weeks after the wedding, the Hope Foundation board met behind closed doors. Constance had chaired their annual gala for 6 years. She'd raised more money than any previous chair. But the board had received calls. Donors asking questions. Members uncomfortable with the optics. Constance wasn't fired. That's not how these things work in small-town society. She was invited to step back. To focus on family. The gala went on in September without her name on the program. I didn't orchestrate any of this. I want to be clear about that. I never called Henderson. I never contacted the foundation. I never posted on social media. I never told anyone outside of Margot and my parents what happened in that hallway. I didn't have to. 200 people watched Constance Whitfield put a plumber and a lunch lady next to the trash. And 200 people went home and talked about it. Consequences don't always come with a microphone. Sometimes they come with a phone call on a Monday morning. A month after the wedding, Garrett showed up at my parents' house. I was upstairs. I heard the knock. Then the screen door creak. Then my father's voice. Garrett. Mr. Marshall. I came to apologize. I was hoping to talk to Fonda. She told you. Go through the lawyers. I know what she said. But I want to say this in person. I should have handled things differently. I should have stood up for your family. Through the window I could see them. Dad on the porch. Arms at his sides. Garrett on the front walk. One step below. Looking up. You should have. Dad said. Can I see her? 5 minutes. Dad didn't move. Didn't shift his weight. Didn't cross his arms. He just stood there. Filling the doorway the same way he'd stood in every doorway of my life. Solid. Present. Unmovable. My daughter made herself clear. If you want to be part of this child's life, Hannah Wells has the paperwork. That's the road. Garrett's face tightened. The polished patience cracked. Just for a second. And something raw showed through. Not remorse. But frustration. The frustration of a man who was used to getting his way and couldn't understand why the script had changed. You're going to regret this, he said. My family won't let this go. Dad looked at him for a long moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. I'm not keeping anyone out. Son. I'm keeping the door. He stepped back inside and closed it. Not a slam. A click. The quiet, definitive sound of a latch falling into place. I watched from the upstairs window as Garrett stood on the walkway, staring at the closed door. Then he got in his car and drove away. Dad never mentioned the visit. That night at dinner, he passed the potatoes and asked me how the clinic was going. 5 months. That's how long it took to build a new life from the pieces of the old one. I found an apartment 3 blocks from my parents. 1 bedroom. 2nd floor. $850 a month. The carpet was beige. The kitchen had 1 counter. The bathroom fan sounded like a helicopter taking off. It was mine. Mom came over with a measuring tape the first day. By the end of the week, she'd sewn curtains for every window. Blue gingham for the kitchen. White cotton for the bedroom. Yellow flannel for the room that would be the nursery. Dad showed up with his toolbox on a Saturday morning. Fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen. Replaced the shower head. Reinforced the closet rod. Then he spent 3 hours in the nursery building a shelf out of reclaimed wood from a barn demolition in Fairfield County. He carved a small groove along the top edge. No name yet. Just a notch where one would go. I dropped to part-time at the clinic during the last trimester. My charge nurse, Patricia, rearranged the schedule without me asking. You covered for me during my hip surgery, she said. This is nothing. I won't romanticize it. There were nights I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Not because I regretted leaving. I never regretted that. Because carrying a child alone is hard in ways nobody prepares you for. The 2 a.m. Cramps with no one to get you water. The ultrasounds where the tech asks, is Dad joining us? The baby shower my mom threw in the living room where the only empty chair was the one that would have been his. I chose this. I'd choose it again. But choosing something right doesn't make it easy. Single motherhood isn't a punishment. But it's not a vacation. Either. It's just life. And I was living it. Elise Marie Marshall came into the world on a Tuesday at 6:14 in the morning. 7 pounds. 2 ounces. 10 fingers. Brown eyes. A scream that shook the delivery room. Marshall. I gave her my name. My parents' name. The name of a plumber and a cafeteria worker who never once made their daughter feel like she wasn't enough. Dad held her first. After me. After the nurses. His rough hands cradled her like she was made of blown glass. He didn't say anything for a full minute. Just stood at the window with the morning light on his face and this baby in his arms breathing. Mom took photos. 47 of them. I counted later. 2 weeks after Elise was born. A letter arrived at my apartment. No return address. But the stationery was heavy. The kind you buy at a specialty shop. Not a drugstore. I recognized the handwriting from the Whitfield holiday cards Garrett used to show me. Richard Whitfield. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter. Elise asleep in the bassinet 3 feet away. Fonda. I owe you an apology. Not for what my wife and son did, but for what I didn't do. I was in the room. I saw the seating chart change. I heard the conversation. And I said nothing. That silence is on me. And I'll carry it. I don't expect forgiveness. And I'm not asking for access to my granddaughter. But if there ever comes a day when you'd allow it, I'd be grateful. I read it twice. Folded it. Put it in the nightstand drawer next to Elise's hospital bracelet. I didn't reply. Not that day. Not that month. Maybe Richard was sincere. Maybe this was strategy. I didn't know. And I was done making decisions based on hope. This time. I'd let time answer. Not wishful thinking. 1 year later. Elise is 13 months old. She has my eyes and her father's jaw. And a laugh that sounds like a hiccup played through a tiny speaker. I'm back full-time at the clinic. Last month. They promoted me to shift lead. It came with a $2 raise and a set of keys to the supply closet. I've never been more proud of a set of keys in my life. The apartment still has beige carpet and 1 kitchen counter. But the walls are covered now. Photos of Elise at the pumpkin patch. Elise with Dad's reading glasses on her head. Elise smearing sweet potato across Mom's apron. The bookshelf Dad built holds 32 children's books and 1 framed picture of my parents on their wedding day. 1991. Standing outside the church on Maple Street. The custody arrangement went through family court in October. Garrett gets 2 weekends a month. He picks Elise up at 9 o'clock. Returns her by 5 o'clock. On time. Every time. I'll give him that. Constance is not part of the arrangement. Not because I banned her. But because I set one condition. Any visit with extended family requires my presence or my parents' supervision. Constance called it an insult. I called it a boundary. She hasn't met Elise. Not because the door is locked. But because she won't walk through it on anyone's terms but her own. Garrett and I communicate through a co-parenting app. Short messages. Pick-up times. Doctor's appointments. No small talk. No arguments. Just logistics. He's different on handoff days. Quieter. He holds Elise a little longer before giving her back. Once. I saw him smell the top of her head and close his eyes. And something in my chest ached. Not for him. But for the version of him that might have existed if he'd been brave enough to choose differently on a Saturday in June. Sunday dinner at the Marshall house. 6 o'clock. Same as every week since I came home. The table is the one I grew up with. Formica top. Chrome legs. That chip in the corner. 6 chairs and not a single one matches. Dad's is a wooden rocker he refinished from a yard sale. Mom's has a cushion she crocheted in 2004. Mine is a folding chair from the garage. The good kind with a padded seat. There's no place cards. No chargers. No string quartet. Mom made her fried chicken. The recipe Constance cut from the wedding menu. Mashed potatoes from scratch. Corn on the cob because Elise likes to hold it even though she doesn't have enough teeth to eat it. Margot is here and her boyfriend, Thomas, who she met at the courthouse last spring. Patricia came, too. She brings pie every Sunday now and claims it's because she bakes too much. Nobody believes her. Nobody cares. Elise is in Dad's lap grabbing at his glasses. He lets her. He always lets her. You know, he says to her close and quiet like he's sharing a secret. Your grandpa used to fix pipes for this whole town. Now I just fix things for you. She throws a spoon on the floor. Everyone laughs. I look around the table. The overhead light buzzes a little. Dad says he'll fix it next week. The wallpaper in the hall is peeling at the seam. There's a draft from the back door that Mom covers with a rolled towel from November to March. No champagne. No crystal. No $85. 000 venue. But every person at this table chose to be here. Every person belongs and nobody is sitting next to the trash. This is my table one. I'm not telling you this story to teach you anything. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's breaking point is different. And I don't know your table 14. But if you're sitting in one right now, if there's a room in your life where you're always in the back, always near the door, always made to feel like you should be grateful for the chair instead of asking why it's next to the garbage, I want you to know something. You can stand up. You don't need a microphone. You don't need 200 witnesses. You don't need a lawyer standing in the hallway or a father blocking the door. You just need to know. In your bones. Past the doubt. Past the guilt. Past the voice that says, don't make trouble. That the people you love deserve better. And if the person you chose agrees when someone calls your family poor, that person didn't choose you. They chose convenience. They chose comfort. They chose the easier version of love. The kind that doesn't require courage. That's not love. That's a seating chart. My name is Fonda Marshall. I'm 30 now. I'm a nurse. A mother. A shift lead. And Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. I live in a one-bedroom apartment with beige carpet and a bookshelf my dad built from barn wood. My daughter laughs like a hiccup. Throws spoons on the floor. And has never once sat at a table where she didn't belong. And I have never been prouder of where I come from. That was my story. Now, I want to hear yours. If you've ever had to stand up for your family, type table 1 in the comments. If you think I made the right call or the wrong one, tell me. I want to know. And would you have answered Richard's letter? That's one I'm still figuring out myself. If you're new here and this resonated with you, hit subscribe. I share stories like this every week. And there's another one in the description I think you'll connect with. Thank you for staying until the end. That means more than you know.